This is Coach EJ, the brand.
And Coach Aaron Thigpen, the source.
Welcome to our podcast today, Aaron. We have a nice little subject here, I think it's something we should talk about because it comes to us every day as we work.
Yeah, we have hundreds of interactions with athletes on a daily basis. And I'm not sure if athletes are aware of the signals that they're sending to the coach. And, so today's topic is, are you sending the coach the wrong message? And basically what it boils down to is how are you communicating and interacting with the coach and what that might say about you or what it may not say about you. And the reason why this topic comes up is because I get a lot of new athletes.
Right.
And so part of the assessment process is just trying to see where they are in terms of their engagement, attitude, that sort of thing, as to whether or not I should take them on as a client. And I don't think these kids are quite aware of how they might be coming across. And I get it, some kids are shy, some kids are introverts, some kids are extroverts. But I think that broader scale, when they have these interactions, not with just trainers, but with potential coaches or recruiters, they have to be aware of how they're coming across. Because again, what's that saying? First impression.
It's your last impression.
Exactly. So I think it's important that we at least kind of touch on this a little bit, and something that parents can talk to their athletes about and make them aware.
And again, to talk about this is, Aaron, I hear this from a lot of different college coaches from different sports, whether it's basketball, track and field, tennis, golf, lacrosse, baseball, football, is the fact that how are they carrying themselves? How are they walking into the sports complex to compete that day? How do they carry their bag? What kind of social media presence do they have? How do they interact with their parents? How do they interact with them if there's a phone call involved when it should be? How are they writing a letter? All of that stuff plays in of how coaches evaluate these players. And from our standpoint, when we have athletes that come to us, I always kind of just listen and watch how they carry themselves and how they talk, what kind of eye contact do they have,
right,
and how they pronounce words, and how confident they are. So I think that goes a long way with who we want to work with.
Exactly.
And it inspires me when I see athletes that really can communicate and talk a certain way or have a good presence about them.
Right.
It's exciting to teach the energy they bring to the session.
Right. No, I agree. And I think that's a very important point is, sometimes you're going to get the energy back that you bring. And if you want a coach to be engaged with you and to be interested in you, well, you've also got to show that interest back to the coach. So it's a reciprocal sort of thing. It's a back and forth. And if anyone's ever had a great experience with the coach that they've liked, they probably, well, if you sit back and think about it, you understand that, hey, yeah, we had that energy between us, that communication, and whether it's casual or whether it's a little bit more rigid or structured, but there was something that went on. There's that transfer of energy back and forth that made working with that person enjoyable and maximize what you're able to get out of a session. The thing that I see more often than not nowadays is you've got kids who come in and they don't make eye contact.
Right.
They don't verbalize much, or they don't project their voice. They kind of talk, real low, and or those sorts of things. And from a coaching standpoint, it's very hard to engage an athlete who's not engaging you back.
Right.
And again, for me, training is a transfer of information. So if we're not making eye contact, you're not verbally, engaging with me. How can I get my information to you and make you better? And so that can be frustrating for a coach and cause a coach or a trainer to disengage, because maybe the perception is that, well, hey, this kid's really not into this. And maybe it's, you're thinking, well, okay, well, why is he here? Or why is she here? And so I just think parents and athletes need to be cognizant of that. And if that's an issue, if you've got an athlete, and it could be just athlete is shy or something like that, or they're a little intimidated, and I get that. But they've got to understand that not everyone runs into the number of athletes we do and the variety of athletes we do with varying backgrounds and sports and attitudes and things that we are, and aren't in tune to this sort of thing as part of the process, and might just write an athlete off or label them in a certain way. And that's what an athlete doesn't want, is some kind of negative label based on a false impression that could hurt their opportunities.
Well, Aaron, I've been in many coaching meetings where coaches said, well, do you see how he walked in there? Do you see how he carried his bag? Do you see he didn't do that? And it had nothing to do with the sport that they were going to participate in that day. It had everything to do with how their presence was, how they carried themselves, how they spoke, and stuff like that. I remember growing up, my father would tell me all the time, you're going into a room and you see people speak.
Yes.
Say hello.
Yeah.
Hi, how are you? And I see less and less athletes over the years, especially in the last 2 or 3 years, really, they go into a room and they come and see you or whatever, and they barely speak. It's like they don't exist or you don't exist. I love athletes that come in and say, hey, hello, how you doing?
Right. Look you in the eye, shake your hand, or maybe not now because COVID, but...
Right, but exactly. Give you an elbow right now.
But no, I dig that too. And it's hard when you got an athlete that you got to draw everything out of. And, again, maybe this starts at home, and parents, you need to start to talk to your kids about, hey, this is how you greet the coach. This is how you engage with the coach. And again, they don't always know. They're young kids a lot of times.
Right.
But I think this will start them on the right track to having a better relationship with their trainer or coach if they can start to have or exhibit these communication skills.
Well, that's a way of getting better also, Aaron, as an athlete, is to be able to communicate what is being taught.
Yeah.
And if you understand it, and if you're not getting a verbal cue or some sort of eye contact cue to say, or a nod, like I do understand what's going on, then how do we as instructors know what's going on with that athlete? It's always like we're reading, like, are they getting it?
Right.
And it seems like I spend a lot of energy, and you do too, at trying to figure out, do they get it?
Do they get it? Yep.
And am I communicating it right? Am I saying the language that they can kind of grasp on the concept that I'm trying to present?
Right.
And a lot of times, you're pulling teeth with that athlete, and that's tough. And I think you tell the parents, hey, parents, sit down with your athletes and say, when you're with your coach, or your coaches, your trainers, or who it is, have a conversation, get to know them a little bit, find out what makes them tick, talk to your trainer, and have a conversation so you build a relationship.
Right.
So that relationship, that involves trust when you're communicating and stuff like that. Those are great assets as life lessons that these young people can build later in the future. And
the back and forth doesn't have to always be about the sport or the instruction, because I get it that most of the time the information is gonna flow one way.
Right.
But again, if you start to talk about other things, whatever it is, hey coach, did you see that movie? Or hey coach, what do you think about this? That then at least kind of starts to get the wheels flowing, they're greased, to start to have casual conversations, if that's appropriate, with that particular coach, where as the athlete gets more knowledgeable, they get more comfortable speaking to the coach.
Right.
So you may be starting off with short banter about things that aren't necessarily sport or training related,
Right.
but it kind of gives you the, you get the practice and the courage and the comfortableness of having a conversation
Right.
with your coach, one that's going back and forth and one that's not just one direction.
And I have an additional note too, Aaron. Coaches out there, your athletes maybe not, comfortable with that. Coaches, try to communicate with them, if you can. And maybe that's not your style either, but maybe that's a way to get the athlete to feel more comfortable around you.
Yeah.
And so I always like that, and Aaron, I think of us as mentors to coaches too, because
Right.
there's young coaches always asking us questions, or we've had a lot of experience, and my advice to coaches is to don't be afraid to open up also and talk to your athlete.
Right. Well, hey, that was a good way to end it. I think that's a very solid point. And parents, just have these conversations. It's like any relationship, communication. Right. And it's good to start early versus later. And you don't want the opportunities for your athlete to go away because of some misperceptions.
Absolutely. Well, again, people, this is EJ, the brand.
And Coach Aaron Thigpen, the source.
And remember, hit us up on all our social media chains. You got Instagram, Twitter, Facebook Live, and we'll be presenting all these new topics to you. And plus, give us feedback. We'd love to hear what you have to say in the world of sports.
See ya.
Talk to you later.